it's the third day of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And here at Arise News, we've been keeping you abreast with activities at the forum. Well, joining us on the show this morning to update us on what's on the agenda for today is Dr. Ruben Abati, Rolake Akunkube-Filani, and of course, Rotis Odiri. Welcome to the morning show. You look fantastic. Let's get straight into it. Rotis, you look snuggled up and warm there. China's Premier Li Qiang disclosed 2023 GDP figures yesterday in Davos, and that was ahead of schedule, and that was confirmed today by the Bureau of Statistics. How do we interpret China's GDP growth, and what are the challenges facing the second largest economy in the world?
Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning to the crew and all our viewers out there. I thought that Li Qiang jumped the gun by releasing GDP figures ahead of schedule before today. But I think what he was trying to do was to instill some type of confidence in China's growth numbers. So it came in at 5.2%, which met expectations. But that was as a result of a low base effect from 2021. So the interpretation here is that China still has a number of economic headwinds. Number one is the property sector, which of course has faced a lot of low investment and caused a lot of bearish sentiment towards China. Number two is China's population, which for the second year in a row has fallen. And as a result of a falling population, it has placed questions on whether China should continue to be putting money into infrastructure investment when you have, increasing infrastructure investment when you have a falling population. And that also has ramifications for future economic growth. Number three is the deflationary environment for China. Prices have fallen in December for a third month in a row. So with prices falling, people are not sure if they want to continue spending money because they expect prices to continue to fall. And then, of course, finally, there is the U.S. economy and the U.S. restricting chip exports to China. So those three are the main headwinds facing China. But Li Qiang came here to Davos to try to tell people that, listen, China is fine, we're on course with our growth prospects, and they expect to keep growing in 2024.
All right, thanks, Rotus. Rolake, the European Central Bank President, Christine Lagarde, is due to speak at Davos today. What is your read on the EU?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, everyone else in the studio. Really interesting that Christine Lagarde of the ECB will be speaking because all eyes will be on Eurozone inflation figures. The December reading for Eurozone inflation showed about 2.9%. compared to 2.4% in the November reading. So when the EU thought inflation had been slowing down, there seemed to be a small rise in inflation, which sort of threw the market a bit into confusion at the end of last year. And so the question is, what will the ECB do this year? Well, Christine Lagarde, coming into Davos, the World Economic Forum, has said that it appears to be a consensus amongst ECB officials that there will be a rate cut, an interest rate cut later in the summer. Interestingly, the question is, why does this matter for the rest of the world? Well, rising rates in other parts of the world may mean an outflow of capital from emerging markets to markets like the EU. So it's important for everyone to keep an eye on what's happening with monetary policy in the EU. And speaking of the EU, yesterday we had Ursula von der Leyen, the EU president, talking about the EU with a real focus on Russia and Ukraine. Of course, the big economic story out of that crisis has been global gas supplies and how it's impacting energy demand and energy prices within the EU. Interestingly, Ursula von der Leyen gave a really interesting data point. She said 2 years ago, 1 in 3 units of energy were being imported from Russia into the EU. But the EU has had to re-strategize around regional energy security. And what that strategy has done is actually improve energy independence within the Eurozone. And as of January this year, only 1 in 20 units are being imported from Russia. So I think that it really underpins the fact that a geopolitical crisis has helped the EU rethink its own broader energy strategy. And I think potential lessons there for other regions that are heavily energy dependent around the world. So all eyes on the Eurozone. I think Christine Lagarde will be speaking today The markets will be watching for any signs of where rates might head at the next sitting of the ECB-backed governors. But it's really interesting times to hear from Christine Lagarde and, of course, the EU yesterday with the focus on the Russia-Ukraine crisis and impact on global gas supplies.
All right. Dr. Bati, I miss you. I've missed you so much, but good to see you out there in Davos. Don't forget your boys here. Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky addressed Davos yesterday, and you know, we're 2 years into the war, over 600 days now of the invasion of Ukraine. What's the sentiment towards the conflict?
Well, what is instructive is that for the first time, President Zelensky was addressing the Davos summit in person. Before now, he had done so virtually, but he had the opportunity yesterday to address world leaders and to also meet with investors. Interestingly, Russia was top of his message. They need to continue to put pressure on Russia to ensure that the war between Ukraine and Russia is not frozen, because, as he said, if it remains frozen, it could be reignited later with even dire consequences. Of course, President Putin has kicked back to say that Russia is winning the war. But what again must be noted, of course, is that he's not asking, Zelensky is not asking for weapons. He's asking for sanctions against Russia, particularly with Russia's access to nuclear power, and also at the same time, he's saying that the allies should continue to mount pressure on Russia for the benefit of the whole of humanity. And secondly, he was also calling for peace. An effort that could even be hosted here in Switzerland, involving, world leaders to ensure that war comes to an end, particularly now that there seems to be a shift to the crisis in the Middle East. What Zelensky's presence here has done is that it has, redirected attention to the conflict between his country and Russia. And he had the opportunity yesterday to also meet on the sidelines with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who in fact said, well, despite the hesitation in Congress, that the United States is committed to providing support for Ukraine. Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor, said more or less the same thing, message of hope and optimism, and expressing support for Ukraine. And you see the same line about collaboration, about cooperation in resolving global conflicts to have positive impact was also reflected in the statement by Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, who was saying that, yes, 2024 may be the big election year, but at the same time, peace is important, security is critical, and he pledged the commitment of the European Commission in this regard. Well, the other thing again was that when the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Qatar spoke, he drew attention to the need to also ensure peace in the Middle East. So yesterday, there was a lot of talk about peace, security, and collaboration and cooperation, a message of hope. And that line is likely to continue today when we have the address by the UN Secretary General. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, will be speaking today. And there's also a conversation later today, or this morning at 10 a.m. With U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who will be addressing the theme, Speaking Truth to Power. And then, of course, the Foreign Minister of Iran will also be speaking today. And a lot of people will be interested in what the Iranian Foreign Minister would say, given the crisis in the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, with the Houthi rebels based in Yemen. And then for the economists, of course, there will be a lot of interest generated by Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who will also have a special address today, developing on the issue about economic growth and, equality, and also, debt, inflation, the global uncertainty that have been indicated in the Global Economic Report that has been launched at this conference.
Fantastic. Dr. Abati, I hope you're able to find some pepper soup over there, because I think that's what that weather calls for. Roti Sudiri, Rolakia Kinkube Felani, and of course Dr. Ruben Abati, thank you so much for your updates, and of course we look forward to hearing more from Davos.